Okay, taking a chance here, recording 2 in a row. My oldest journal, not yet recorded, is from June 4th, first one of that day. Now, that was an Ascension Day on the Mayan calendar, and it was Serpent, 13 Serpent. I don't look those things up generally until I'm finished with or recording or uploading the journal. And so this one was written, and then I went back and I put in a note because of what the journal was. It says 13 is ascension energy, and serpent energy is quote unquote movement and the creation of time. Pretty cool, huh? I only learned this after the whole thing was written, believe it or not. Now, I've probably changed since I wrote this. June 4th, it's the end of June now. Time without space, question mark, massive computer sim. If it's any kind of a computer sim, I'm going to tell you up front, it's a divine computer. It's a cosmic thing that is so far beyond our mechanical concept of computing as to be out of this world. All right, now I've got a 2013 Project Camelot video here. It's a panel discussion from Awake and Aware that you might want to come to the journal to get that link, the written journal. Been listening to Project Camelot Roundtable from Awake and Aware 2013. It's on time and time travel. Now, this might not have turned into a journal if comments were enabled there, but they weren't. And I've just got to get some words out about this. Ready for a laugh? I don't yet know what they are, and some of you will believe me, will know what I mean. Perhaps the main thing that grabs my interest is the way a dozen or so panelists seem to consistently separate out time from space. Now, personally, for whatever reason, I'm not sure, but to me, this just seems ridiculous. What it feels like is that I seem to know otherwise, to just know that they are different aspects of one thing, the same thing. Things that make you go, right? Knowing my divine side, I'm tempted to totally trust what I sense here. Knowing my human component, I won't move quite so quickly. It's okay to test the waters in things like this, to clarify where the knowing originates, and thus the journal's wonderful ability to help us discern alchemically. Now, it may be that I can't go very far with this one right now. This mind knows precious little on the topic from a science perspective. And what's out there from a more metaphysical perspective, well, that's all over the board. No need to go into any of that. It would just pull into mind. So I'll just feel for what seems really right to me, what I sense. Any coin has two sides, front and back. This is obvious, right? Can you imagine removing one of them? Or adding a third? That's the kind of feeling I get when people speak about time as if it were separate from space. Or the reverse, I suppose. It just doesn't feel right. And the feeling is deep. So, what if every moment of time were connected to a spot in space, one to one, like the sides of the coin? What would that be like? Could that be behind why it is that when you go visit someplace like Egypt or Europe, somewhere ancient, you can, or some people can sense or even see the action from another time there? Now, this happens often, though not that many of us speak up and share it, perhaps from fear. We know that ghosts, we hear that ghosts seem to get stuck in a certain place. and in a certain time, generally being the one in which they were resident in that place. So there's that linkage again. I don't think this is universally true, but then what is in 3D, right? I think I've heard of ghosts or spirits following a person who moves to another location, so this linkage isn't as strong. One must consider, too, that there are many kinds of invisibles hanging around, not only the ghosts of people who have passed. And you know, sometimes that ghost, it isn't really the person. It's like a film that was made that just keeps running on repeat. And it's not that the soul is fully present there at all. We've likely heard of shadow people and poltergeists, of fairies, of gnomes, and any number of different types of beings. So, of course, we can't generalize across all of that. Moving on. Okay, I give up. Here's how I see time-space. When in Harp, we're in superposition. That means we've stepped out of space as we know it, 3D space. We're quite literally everywhere at once equally. This makes it super easy to shift your focus of attention wherever you like, at which point you find your quote-unquote self already there. Now, this also goes for time. Being in Harp is stepping out of 3D time just as much as stepping out of space as we know it. Just as in superposition, we more accurately step into space, into all of it, so it is with time. We are suddenly every when, just as we are everywhere. Superposition. Now, if that's a new idea for you, give it a moment to sink in. Make friends with the pause button, folks. It'll help you take a more conscious walk with the journals. Be in Harp, of course. Yeah. Be sure always to be in Harp to receive the journals. They're the most mind-expanding that way. Don't know about expanding your mind, but they will expand you out into more of what you are. And the fact is, these journals are pretty much worthless to mind, which can only misunderstand them. So, it was no problem to conceive of being any place at the speed of thought, right? Just as in an OBE, an out-of-body experience, the merest thought takes you to its locale. See? Here's a suggestion. Though I don't do it, those of you who do practice having OBEs, next time you are out and about, so to speak, let your mind take you to another location in time. See if it isn't just as easy as moving in space. You probably have already done it anyway. Now, the whole thing of dimensions may complicate this a bit for the 3D mind anyway. For instance, as many of us know, when you're out of your body, the room you're in, though largely the same, may have some differences. Some things will be out of place, or the clock will have a different time, that sort of thing. It's much like the duplicating patterns in the Mandelbrot set of fractals. They're not quite precisely the same as the first pattern, just very close. So it may be that some experiences like that also involve movement in time. Could be. I don't know. They may also be movement in dimensions or frequencies. So this isn't just 3D. It can get tricky in many ways. Let me stick to what I seem to know, what feels really solid. After all, I'm not all that interested in mind explorations. It's for love of reality and truth that I pursue such things. Same as many of you, most of you. Wait, there is one more rather key angle, one which isn't part of my knowing so much. That's that this whole dimension, perhaps more, may be artificially generated by a massively advanced sort of supercomputer. Now, if that was the case, then it would be a very easy thing for each microsecond to be attached to the space. Said another way, each atom or quark or tiny element of space could be attached to the microsecond in an invisible linkage. And just as any movie we see is really just a collection of stills, of snapshots, run at an appropriate speed to simulate motion, so it would be in our computer sim. The whole thing would be the most massive, beyond massive collection of stills, well beyond human imagination, stored on the most massive or ultra powerful of hard drives, likely in crystal or in whatever way. Movement in time or space would be just now. Like a DVD where past, present, and future are all equally accessible now. You travel to other times, you travel to other places now. You getting it? Stick to heart. Don't think about it. Just stick to heart. Stick to how it feels. There. Let that sink in for a bit. Wow, huh? Just like watching a video, we could push pause at any time. Once we knew how to get around, how to operate the thing, we could theoretically cut and paste too, adding bits here, taking them out there, changing history, so to speak. If it can be done on a computer, then it could be done in what we had mistakenly come to call real life. Russian scientists seem to be leading the world into frontier areas such as DNA research, where they've discovered how to modify DNA by use of language, for instance, instead of surgically. Imagine cutting and pasting via word order, syntax, grammar, and the like. It's an, oh my God, time to be living, folks. You don't know how blessed, how lucky you are to be in a body. I, for one, feel honored to be a part of it, participating. That does give you pause, though, doesn't it? Just imagine the concern of those in charge of that master computer if, say, one of today's scientists would tune in to how it works and potentially hack the thing. It gets you into contemplating ethics and integrity in a heartbeat, something that's notably absent from much of today's world, not just science. Only have a look at our ways of processing food, which are so horrible, they won't let you in to see, and certainly not to film. But because it's distanced from us, and we're not permitted to see or know, we buy from the grocery, normally without a thought, without being present, without being aware of what we're handling and the energy of it. It's perfectly capable, it's perfectly possible to raise animals lovingly, to give them a happy life, to care, to truly care for and about them. And truly, they don't mind giving their lives. It's part of the code of life currently. It's been made out to be ugly and horrible and dog eat dog, Darwin. Screw Darwin, okay? Just throw that all away. He didn't even believe it toward the end of his life. He reneged on his own theory. And yet, so much of science still buys into it. We have everything we need right here, right now, to shift that whole thing. And there are loads and loads of pioneers demonstrating exactly what I'm talking about. With the love they share with their livestock, with the land, with the plants themselves. Look at Findhorn. We have all that we need. We have heaven right here. We just have to shift inside to make it visible outside. And we can go and sit at the feet of those who have already made this shift and learn from them and say, how did you do it? What did it take? How did you make the shift into knowing that this that you're doing here is possible? We are powerful creators, my friends. Time to pick up that drop stitch and remember just who and what we truly are. Back to the journal. Okay, so I talked about the horror of processing food. So there would then likely have to be partitions in this hard drive or crystalline matrix. Just for fun, let's call it a crystalline drive, just to please me. These partitions would be for the protection of all, not just the computer, but all of life, everywhere in cosmos. Now, as you see, I've taken it big, assuming it runs all of cosmos, not just 3D Earth. This is the kind of stuff I got in mild trouble for at school. I would have these huge ideas, but not be so good at carrying it along, at filling in the blank places in my essays and papers to help the teacher tag along. Oh well, hey, it surprises me too. Like I said at the beginning of this one, I have no idea where this thing is going when I begin, nor even as I write. It just goes where it will. And that's really good because it gets it out from under the control of 3D mind. I'm supposing that's the work of the rest of the mind, the subconscious and the rest, but I don't know. There's also spirit or source or awareness, which is in no way dependent on any brain or mind. It carries on just fine, both before birth and after bodily death. Actually, that's likely how I come into much of this kind of thing, from taking the limits off, from knowing I am so much more than body and brain. When you just know that, well, it calls on, brings to the fore those aspects of being, giving them your permission to come forward. Do you see? It's identifying with higher self. Now, back to, could we be in the midst of a computer sim? Well, yes, of course we could, but please don't let that make you afraid. Don't feel like a puppet. It's just not like that. That's the mind and fear and all that. Chuck it, okay? Or at least look the other way. Get back in heart. Stick with heart in this no matter what. It doesn't really matter. And heart knows it. You are divine, one way or the other. And that's where most people go wrong with all this computer sim stuff. They get off into fear. What the source of the drama in which we participate here is doesn't change that in any way. You are that, not flesh and bone nor mind made. Although your flesh and bone is mind made. Heck, you may even be at the helm of the computer sim. For a mixed metaphor, the real you, of course, even on this one planet, we know there was once life so primitive that to see the ET visitors who arrived was to them to see God. Yet the big difference, as I think we can see, was really just technology. Consciousness is consciousness, no matter the development of their science. That doesn't make those ETs into gods. One thing is pretty certain. We know almost nothing, and most of what we think we know will turn out to be just rot. Everything we think about the way things are and how they work, I have a great deal of fun just throwing it out. Yeah, just toss it. Hey, if any so-called law of science only tends to last no more than 20 years, and that's here on Earth, can you imagine what it must be like to the sim creators? No, of course you can't. Yet. Not here, only accessing the body-mind computer or being. For that, it takes going much, much deeper within. Well, in order to do that, it requires, or it works best if you first let go of current beliefs. If you are convinced that things work in a particular way, that, by definition, means that you are not open to other possible ways, any one of which could be more accurate. This has been interesting and rather strange. It did turn into a way to illustrate some of my understanding, but also the way that I work, which is to hold everything so very lightly that you're open to some really strange stuff. Hey, the stranger, the better to me. I call that recess. I call that fun. Namaste. And how strange that it would be written on 13 serpents.